To see examples of what we talked about on this episode, along with further information, go to bunchofdorks.com.
Welcome everyone to
Two Dimension Podcast,
the comic book podcast
with no direction. What's up, everybody? You know that song, you know this voice. It's your boy Rook. Joining me as always is the man with the plan. It's Mr. Don Moore.
Circus of Malfunction is my middle name today.
I think it's both of our middle names. Our guest this evening, returning to us again, a favorite of ours, multi-time Eisner Award nominee, writer of so many things. It's the one and only Ryan Claytor.
Oh, man. Thank you so much, guys. It's great to be back. Thank you so much for having me here. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
Thanks for coming back. I don't know why you do, but you do.
Yeah.
Because I have such a great time. That's why. I'm telling you, these promotional tours I'm doing are getting smaller and smaller. And I don't know. I enjoy talking with folks, but I especially enjoy talking with the folks that I call back. So thank you for having me back.
Oh, no problem.
Ryan, you've been so busy lately. So many different things happening. I watch what happens on your Facebook. You're constantly going right now. What are you working on now?
Well, I'm glad that you asked because I've got another thing I'm doing. Last time we chat, I was proposing the biggest, baddest book I have ever created. This, the oversized hardcover art book. Rook, I know you have it, so I don't need to explain it to you, but look at that. There it is. But for the listeners who do not have such a thing, it's an art book featuring 20 years of my work in comics, illustration, and design. And I've designed everything from neon signs to custom watches to fancy pancakes. And it's all in there with a heavy emphasis on process. So why am I mentioning that book that I was proposing before? Because it came out and it's garnered some nice praise. As Rook mentioned at the beginning of the show, it was Eisner nominated. It's currently Ringo nominated. We'll see how all that goes. So I feel just super humbled that it's getting this sort of feedback and recognition. So thank you to Rook, Dawn, Dallas, everybody on the show listening, and everybody who helped bring that to life. But with that reception, I also thought, well, I would like to do this some more, but also not wait a couple decades to do it. So this next publication of mine is similar to that art book in that it's showcasing projects that I've done, but it's over the course of the past year instead of the past 20 years, so more updated. And it's also like that book in that there's a lot of process work associated with it. So it's not just an image of a pretty finished picture. It's taking you behind the scenes to the messy stuff, to where it started, the thumbnail sketches, the deconstructed projects, and showing you how it came to be. But this time it's going to be even larger. So my oversized hardcover art book was 9 inches by 12 inches, which felt really great. But I have always wanted to make a publication in newsprint, and I found a printer who will do it for me. And this new size is about 11 inches wide by about 15 inches tall. So it's like 25% large. The pages are 25% larger than my art book, and it's entirely in newsprint, which just like, I don't know, it geeks me out. And I know you guys are print nerds, so I'm hoping it might do the same for you. But I actually just got a proof copy from my printer. And I know this is an audio podcast, but just wanted to show it off to the guys here. And you can go to annualdispatch.com to see it yourself. That's annualdispatch.com. And it will take you straight to the Kickstarter page where this project is live right now.
Excuse me while I go there.
Yeah, I got so many questions all of a sudden. I'm kind of jumping out of my seat. Now, is this going to be a book or is this going to be a periodical? Because what you showed us was a periodical.
That's right. So thank you for the very good question. I get excited and I forget to explain things. So
No, no, you're
yes.
fine. You're fine.
So my goal is to release these newspaper periodicals annually rather than wait 20 years to release another art book. I'd like to share my work with folks and the process of doing so on a more frequent basis. One of the things that I did when I released my big 20-year book was I did a few tour stops, and some of them had presentations associated with it. And one of the presentations that I would do is to give some helpful hints to folks that are thinking about doing their own art book, things that I wish I knew, best practices I wish I would have practiced prior to doing my 20-year art book, because then I think it might not have taken me 5 years to make. So one of those tips that I was handing out to people was saying, make a regular practice of documenting your art. So basically every quarter or so, treat it like quarterly taxes. Make a calendar reminder and say, okay, this week I'm going back in the last 3 months, looking at what I did, and I'm setting up these pages just like I would in my art book, but instead of over the course of 5 years, just do it over the course of a week, 4 times a year. Easy. And then at the end of that year, you've got a publication that you can release. It might be 24, 32, 48, whatever it happens to be, number of pages, and then you can release that on a more frequent basis so that as an artist, you are not waiting 20 years before you monetize something. And then your audience knows that you still exist rather than waiting 20 years to find out. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to take my own advice and release these in a more frequent fashion.
Okay, you've led me to yet another question. I've still got five more from the other section that you
I'm here
sent.
for them.
Okay, it's funny because I was thinking, what are we going to talk about? He didn't send us anything, so okay, it's just cascading. One thing you said is interesting that a lot of people that want to do comics or are doing comics on their own don't think about its monetizing. And you seem to have a very fine mind when you do this. I'm going to say this just as kind of out of nowhere, but when people think comics, you usually think about mainstream superheroes. A lot of people that create their own comics create superheroes. And I'm not dissing that. I like a lot of that stuff. But your projects are extremely unique. And this is one thing I always call comics a language. It's a language of communication. And I see a lot of young creators, especially young female creators, always complain. I just saw something today. Some young lady said, "Why are there so many superheroes? When was this decided?" Kind of a joke. But if you look at Japan, if you look at France, the comics are endless, and they do have a lot of the stuff that they publish here in the United States, superhero type wise. But there's so much more, and that's one thing your work shows. You've had pinball schematics, and the whole history of pinball, which is awesome. Your grandfather's poem is absolutely. I always have it just right here within reach. It's absolutely beautiful.
Cool. Thank you.
But yours is unique. How do you put these projects together, and how do you monetize things? I think it's something people need to hear.
Oh, gosh. Well, first of all, I like what you said a few sentences back where you mentioned that comics are a language. I really
Yeah.
like that because it's not prose, it's not pictures, it's both of them. And together they become more than the sum of their parts. And put a prose writer or a painter in a room and tell them to make comics, and we'll see what comes out.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
are their own language. So I really like that you're categorizing them like that. That's great. In terms of what do I decide to do for a project and how do I monetize it, my projects are based largely on my whims. I have a lot of ideas of stuff I'd like to do, and ultimately I cannot do all of them. So I'll sit down when it's project time and try to sort of systematize my whims in a way and say, okay, of these projects, what do I think would be most interesting to other people? What do I think would be most interesting to me? Where are my motivations lying right now? What gets me excited? Who have I told I am going to work on something with? I need to take that into account too. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. So in terms of deciding on a project, that's one. But in terms of monetizing it, I, you know, there's a lot of things that I'll consider when starting up a project. For example, this one, the annual dispatch I'm mentioning. I've always wanted to do something in newspaper format, and I've never quite found the right project to do it. In fact, I remember a few years back, I was talking to my neon fabricator buddy.
Yeah.
If you saw the 20-year art book, you saw a bunch of neon signs that we collaborated on. I designed them, he fabricated them. I love working with Josh Goodacre. He owns the Neon Shop in Vermontville, Michigan. Um, and I remember coming to him once a few years back and saying, "Hey, what would you think if we put out like a newspaper kind of collecting all the signs that we've done? And this could kind of be like a calling card for us. We could hand it out." And like, I could tell his interest wasn't quite there like mine was. And I think that was probably for the better. I think that wasn't quite right because it's not cheap to make a newspaper these days, especially a low run newspaper. So I think I was kind of trying to jam a square peg in a round hole at that point. But that was still in my mind that I wanted to do something. And then when I started doing the 20-year art book tour, talking about that sort of stuff, making things in a more periodic way. What if I made this a periodical? What if this were in a newspaper? And the, ideas just sort of snowballed. And what made it even like the kismet of all this was that eventually, when I turn 65 in another 20 years and I'm ready to make another big giant art book, um, in theory, I will be able to take these pages that I've designed and put them directly into that art book without a lot of fuss because the size of that newspaper is almost directly proportional to the page size on my art book. This was total dumb luck. I have a weird page size on my art book. I say it's 12 by 9. It's 11 and 3/4 by 9. Nobody knows the difference. The case bound treatment
Yeah.
makes it 12, so I'm not lying. But the page size is actually 11 and 3/4 by 9. And to find another proportional thing out there, stock, like I couldn't believe it when I started doing the measurements and figuring this out. So it was all kind of it did not happen immediately or when I wanted it to, but I kept it in the back of my mind. And then ultimately, pieces kind of fell together to make it the right time and the right project. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did.
Basically, what I just heard is everyone else is playing checkers and Ryan's over here playing chess.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, you got a
Oh boy.
20-year plan
You're
sitting here.
you're giving me too much credit, Rook.
Yeah.
I'm
But,
not.
I told you
mean,
this was based on whims, right?
well,
right,
I
it's based
see.
on whims, but I mean, like you've set yourself up to be able to do another one piece at a time in 20 years and already have your base layouts done and then go back and tweak it to your whims at the time. I mean, that's bloody brilliant, man.
You're what you said was right. I am sort of slowly developing my next giant art book a couple decades from now, but doing it in a more manageable and sustainable way
Yeah.
because I learned the hard way. It took me literally 5 years to make that last book. And I don't want to take 5 years to make the next book. I want to do it a little bit at a time, one bite at a time,
One bite
and
at a
just be
time.
ready when it's time to
Yep.
produce it. So yeah, you're
Just
right.
add
I'm
just
sorry,
add
what was that,
what
Don?
Rook, just add what Rook said. I've always said this: when you're in the mid, when you start a project, the first one's the hardest thing to get. But then after that, things tend to fall into place at times if you keep working on it, which is what you're doing. The size, you do have a very organized way about you. You have a plan, you have thinking, and I think as far as the new printing, I think you kind of understand how printing works and the sizes. I think you kind of have a. We had a guy on the show that was a rapper, and I was trying to figure out. I served in the Navy with a guy before I ever heard what rap was in the early '80s, and sometimes he'd just start rapping off, and I asked him. I said, "How do you do this?" It just pop it out of my head. Well, his head worked a lot faster than mine because I still can't do it.
Yep.
But this guest we had, he told me that you have a lot of things. It's kind of like having a sketchbook. You have a lot of phrases and a lot of rhymes and stuff kind of built in your head, and you put them together in different ways. That kind of, to me, it applies to what you're just saying. You kind of have a plan, and sometimes they just fall into place quite easily because you're not coming from out of left field.
Yeah, I love that analogy of freestyle rapping being akin to sketchbooking. That's
Yeah.
very ad lib, kind of on the spot. And I agree. I've watched freestylers and just been absolutely baffled at how they can do it because same, my mind does not work that fast. I can do a rhyme, but I have to look things up in the dictionary and, give me 5 minutes. Maybe I
Yeah.
can make one rhyme. But to
Well,
make 10 over the course of 2 seconds, unbelievable. But yeah, it's so interesting how different people's brains function because I feel like my brain is not wired for language. Like I've tried to learn other languages and I have very rudimentary skills in Spanish, in addition to English,
oh, well,
but I cannot, carry on a reasonable conversation with anyone. I feel like language must share very similar brain cells or synapses with creating music because I am also very bad at making music. Like I've tried playing guitar, I've tried playing mandolin, I've tried playing a number of different things. And that's just not how my brain works. I can dance, I can step on a beat, and I have fun with that. But when it comes to making the music, oh man, I feel like that's like music is a language. And boy, howdy, am I ever amazed by the the black magic that comes from musicians and, like you said, singers, songwriters, rappers, freestylers. Wow, unbelievable to me. Yes.
yeah. That's one reason you and I are friends because we're right there. Except I can't dance either. But
I didn't say I was any good, but
if you can stay with the beat, then you're okay. I fight it. That's what everyone says. You're fighting it. Well, but
Meanwhile, I'm over here thinking, well, I've tried all of that. I've tried music. I've tried languages. Not real great at language, I got to tell you. Took 3 years of Spanish in high school and still cannot speak the language.
same. I even had full immersion I lived in Mexico and I
Oh my!
still am
okay,
awful.
I was going to say you have to immerse yourself in the language, but if you're in Mexico and you still leave, I'm sorry, Ryan. That's
Yeah, I
I
know.
can't
I
stand
know.
with you on
This
that
is
one.
something I've come to accept about myself. But Rook, you are a heck of a storyteller because you are, you know, uh, dungeon master. You carry on games that last, how long is your campaign going on now?
That's funny because when you were talking about the organizing of one bite at a time and how long it took you, I'm reminiscing on how I tried to put all of it together to do a source book. We've been going for about 8 or 9 years now.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible.
Same base storyline.
Hmm.
The newest campaign that kicked off a year ago, maybe. I've lost track of time. Um, did a 30-year time jump.
Huh.
So my players all created new characters and they're slowly working their way through the world, finding out what happened to their previous
Oh,
characters,
interesting.
where they sit now.
So
Um,
cool.
yeah, it's you know but it's funny because you're talking about organizing all this work and putting it into a book, which is something I tried and very quickly was like, I don't have the spoons for this anymore. Like, at least not right now. Um, but the idea is there, the thought of doing it. And I love the idea that you have of doing like quarterly taxes with your creative work, sitting down every 3 months, every 4 months, just sitting down and going through it and going, okay, this all needs to be organized in a way that's manageable and understandable, because mine is not. Mine is chaos. I've got a Pinterest account over here. I've got Google Docs over here. I've got a handwritten notebook that I carry with me 24/7. I mean, you might see me at a bar one night, and all of a sudden you'll see a book in my hand and just me scribbling notes. It happens all the time.
Totally. You can't control when ideas feed themselves to you. That carrying around of a notebook is such a great idea. And, like I was saying about this whole newspaper thing that I'm doing, I have tried on other occasions to make it work and it didn't, but now it was like the right time, the right project, the right place. And I think it's all coming together. I mean, the campaign is going right now. I'm bound and determined to make it work, and we'll see how it goes. But all that to say, like, you tried a book, maybe it wasn't the right time, maybe it wasn't the right project, but maybe it'll come around at some point. And when I first started doing One Bite at a Time, the 20-year art book, I tried some stuff that did not work. Like I, take copious photos and have all sorts of different process stuff archived. And I pulled all that out and jammed, a million photos on a page and showed it to a buddy of mine. And I'm like, hey, I was real excited. What do you think of my new baby? And I was so thankful that he was so um, honest with me and said, this is a lot, man. I'm not going to read it all. It's too much. And that is what I needed to hear so that I could pare down each project into its own spread. I was going across multiple spreads and pages for a singular project, and that's too much. And so that was really helpful for me to hear, to craft that project into something digestible for a reader rather than just like, look at all this process. Like, nobody needs to see all that. But a few steps along the way, yes, that's interesting. Sitting there for umpteen pages on a single project, nobody needs to see that.
Not to mention how much thicker the book would have ended up.
Yeah, I think it ended up plenty thick. I didn't need it any more than that.
Yeah, end up with an encyclopedia set.
Right? That is
Well,
not a format on my to-do list. Believe it or not.
one other question I have when you're talking about the newsprint, what kind of newsprint is this? Is this like newspaper newsprint, the comic book newsprint, or the newsprint that they're passing off as newsprint these days?
Okay, that's a good question. I am not super steeped in the variations of uncoated paper stock. There's, pulpy old newsprint. There's, somewhat like newer news. Again, I'm not steeped in it, so I feel like I'm saying things out of turn, but it's definitely a thin, uncoated paper stock that has a slight I'm trying to think of the right word, grayness to it. It feels pulpy, it feels newspapery. I don't have the paper stock to tell you exactly what number and GSM it happens to be, but it feels flippin' great. It feels like a new newspaper, and I found a place who will print newspapers in low runs. I've been working really closely with them. They're called Newspaper Club. They're out of the United Kingdom, and we've been partnering together. I'm mentioning them on my website. They're giving me a little break on the cost, so I can offer it to people at a lower cost than I could ordinarily. They're featuring me in some of their social stuff, and anyway, it's been a real pleasure working with them. And because they are print on demand newspapers, I was able to order a singular one. Granted, that one, has a much higher price point
Right.
than if
Yeah.
I ordered a couple hundred, which, I hope to do at the end of this campaign. But it was enough to give me something like a real physical, tangible object that I could photograph and show people at the on the campaign. This is the actual thing that I am planning on making. And I love to be able to do that rather than like making mock-ups. Like I want to show people as close as humanly possible to what they are going to get if I can. And I was able to do that with Newspaper Club.
Yeah, that's a really good answer, and that's really nice, Ryan. But I guess my next question is, for the people that buy it, where are they going to put it? Have you thought about that, Ryan?
I think they should post it over their headboard in their bedroom. More will be coming, so leave room for the next copies. You can frame them around your bedroom. That's my hope. But make sure they're accessible so you can take them down and look through them too. There's not a poster. It's a periodical.
Right. Years ago, DC did Wednesday's Comics. It was a big
Yes.
paper. I
Yes.
really liked it, and I I got them, and I love them. But I'm thinking, where am I going to put these things?
Where'd you put Wednesday Comics?
Well, they ended up they're folded in half, and they fit in a comic box somewhat.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
that's fine. But Steve Rude did the Nexus as a newspaper for a while.
Hmm.
I bought one. It was bigger than that. I've got it in a film box. I'm old school. I have those flat film boxes we used to use in graphics.
Cool.
And which the problem is it's buried with a bunch of other film boxes, and I never read it. And
Huh.
so when you're talking about this, I'm thinking this is really nice. I like this project, but I just picture a lot of people having these stacks of newspapers, like in the old days, fire hazard. Middle of the floor.
Hey. I'm gonna say this. Do you remember the old previews used to come in like a newspaper form that we
Yes,
would
and that's
pick up?
one thing I'm talking about, buddy.
Yeah, they're free at the I had stacks and stacks and stacks of those for years. I I would still pick them up if they were in that old newspaper form because
Me too.
I like that old format. I think it's awesome. You know, one of the things I'm getting a kick out of this uh, with your project, Ryan, is the fact that it is like a newspaper. When I was teaching graphics, we took a class to a print shop for a tour, and it was like the middle of the night. They were printing the next day's newspaper. The other instructor and I walked into that room, and that smell in the
Mm,
press room hit
yep.
us.
Yep.
We didn't even have to ask. We automatically, both of us going, print newspapers? And the guy looks at me and goes, "Yeah, how'd you two know that?" We're like, "Yeah, we know it."
Yeah.
We turn,
We're not amateurs. Come on.
yeah. The funniest part about this is we turn around and we look at this classroom of adult students who have never been in a press room, and I'm watching them all covering their faces, like,
Ah!
oh my god, it smells so bad in here." And me and this teacher were looking at each other, and she's just like, "It smells great. What are you guys talking about? Yeah, this is fantastic. This is what life is."
Smells like books. This is beautiful.
I don't know what it is. Newspaper has
Yes.
a certain smell.
For sure.
And I'm a weird person, and I've done this multiple times. And Don comes over to talk about comics in person, and I'll hand him a book and I'll be like, "You got to smell this one."
When you're talking about that, when I was 9 when I started really saving comics. And one of my best friends at school, he said he had a coffee pot box full of comics. So I spent the night with him one night. His mom kept it up in the attic. And so, we're 9 years old. She took us up to the crawl space, and each one of us picked 5 comic books. He was a really smart kid. His father was a petroleum engineer, smart people. And I guess they were buying him comic books before we could read, for him to learn to read. So they had Metamorpho, Metal Men, all these old comics that didn't exist when I was growing up. And that was just heaven to me. And the smell of old news, because all the newsprint I had was fairly new. And I just thought this is the greatest smell in the world. You know, and you sleep on the floor by the comics, you smell all the time, and old comic books smell good as they go on. And newsprint, there is something, especially if it's in a print house. But and I'm glad you're bringing this back. Again, the storage thing, Brian, that's an issue.
Yeah. So, man, I want to touch on so many things that you guys have said over the course of the past 5 minutes. I'm going to first jump to Don's issue of storage. And I didn't mean to be cheeky with you, but
Oh no, I didn't
in
take it
terms
that way.
of where to store it, I cannot control what people do with it. They could fold it in half and put it in a smaller box if they wanted to. I am going out of my way to make sure that this gets to you, the backer, the buyer of this periodical, in a very nice way. It is not going to be folded in half. And I've found larger bags that these can fit in. I found larger boards that will keep them nice and straight. I found larger book mailers that can keep it nice and flat in shipment. So this is going to get to you in a pristine form. And because I'm giving this to you in a bag and a board that's oversized to hold this thing, you could conceivably put it on a shelf. At 15 inches tall, you've probably got a bookshelf that's 15 inches tall, and you could slot those in there pretty easily. And because my hope is to continue releasing this annually, they ideally will start piling up next to one another, and you can have a nice little collection and keep them in reasonable shape because of these oversized bags that I'm handing you from the Kickstarter campaign.
Okay,
So
one,
that's so
you
that's
weren't
my
being
hope in terms of storage. Does that
okay.
help?
No, it does help, and you weren't being cheeky. I was, but no, that's actually a good answer. And if it comes like the Wednesday's comics I talked about, they came folded. I would die before I folded anything that came flat. So
Yeah,
I think
same.
pretty much everybody listening is the same way. So folding is not an answer, but
Yeah,
yeah, I could see putting it on a shelf when you get several of them.
it's actually a conversation that I've had with Newspaper Club. I said, okay, look, I see that this particular size is folded in half like a book. The size up is not only folded in half like a book, but then the page itself is folded in half. The thing that I'm getting is not going to be is not going to have the pages folded in half, right? And they're like, yep, they will come to you just as you see on the website. And they did. You see this copy that I'm
Yeah.
showing you. It's nice and flat. And so that's how it will come to you as well once I individually package them and fulfill the campaign. But the other thing I wanted to touch on is there's, you know, I think a comics collector, a bibliophile of any sort knows that, I don't know, there's like this feeling that comes over you with that sense of smell. Sometimes tastes or sound or smell can bring back memories. And I think that we, as comic book readers and collectors, have such a tangible, physical, multi-sensory connection to these things that have been a part of our lives for so long that we probably have a specific era of that brings back those memories, just washes over us. And I have original Gru comics from the 1980s that were printed on old poopy newsprint paper,
Yeah.
and those are perfection to me.
Yes,
The
yes,
slight misregistration of the inks, the slight bleeding, the pulpy paper, the uncoated paper stock, the smell that you were talking about. And it's just, oh, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about all of this. And I say this because I think that comic readers, comic creators, comic collectors know that. And there's this one story. Okay, so I'm gonna tangent a little bit. I swear this is coming back, but I'm a professor at Michigan State University, where we happen to have the largest public collection of comic books in the world. We've mentioned this on the show before. I'm not going to beat this dead horse, but I do have a very fortunate position in that I get to invite a lot of heavy hitters to campus. Every year I'm inviting new people. And one particular year at the MSU Comics Forum, the Michigan State University Comics Forum, is this event that happens for multiple days where we bring a couple of keynote speakers, multiple Artist Alley folks, multiple scholars from around the world presenting their own work. And the keynote creator from 2018 was Lucy Knisley. Lucy Knisley has written and illustrated Relish. She's written books about marriage. She's written books about parenthood. She's written books about a ton of stuff. Anyway, if you're not familiar, look up Lucy Knisley. She's fantastic. And when she was here, I scheduled a tour of the Special Collections Library for her. And the following day, I was asking her about it, and she called it, what were her words? It was like, it was the most wonderful smell cave. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, that's perfect. Because you're in comics nirvana, but there's this smell associated with it. And of course, that brings back all those memories of all those comics that we've all grown up with. So anyway, I wanted to mention that to you to let you know that we're in this special club of weirdos who appreciate such things.
Oh no, that's not a weirdo thing. That's a common thing that everybody knew the smell of newsprint,
Mhm.
especially if you had a lot of old books at the same way. Old books, bookstores. Used bookstores are the greatest places to go to.
Yeah.
So you're on Smell-O-Vision with Ryan Claytor, caller. One other thing, and don't ever do this if you visit the Michigan State University comic collection. But old comics, Silly Putty will take up the images. They don't. They
Oh,
stopped doing that in the '80s because of soy-based ink. Thank you very much. But the petroleum-based inks, Silly Putty will pick them up.
I
Hours.
remember doing that as a kid.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we all do that. I
Right?
taught my son that.
And then you can manipulate the image once it's on there. And oh
Yep.
yeah, that
Oh
was the
yeah, that was a
best.
blast. Silly Putty is
Totally.
like the greatest thing in the world.
Oh, that's
And it was an
fantastic.
accident.
So, Ryan, with Annual Dispatch, are you planning for this to be more in depth per project than One Bite at a Time was? Or is this going to be kind of more of an overview of what you're working on throughout the course of the time frame?
It's going to be very similar to One Bite at a Time in terms of project scope. So each project will have a spread. On the right-hand page, you'll see the finished project. On the left-hand page, you'll see a little bit of didactic information about the piece, a little bit of text, but mostly images showcasing how it came to be. Occasionally, there'll be a hero image associated with it on the following page, like maybe there'll be a close-up of a neon sign, or maybe there'll be a full spread of some original artwork or something like that. But typically, each spread showcases a single project, just like One Bite at a Time. So in that way, it's similar, but it's different because it's less pages. It's also different because the pages in the Elephant Eater Comics Annual Dispatch are larger, like I said, about 25% larger. And as we've been geeking out about, it's also printed on newsprint. So those are the things that make it different from One Bite at a Time. And it's also more current. So it focuses on projects that I did over the course of the past year rather than projects that happened over the course of the past 20 years. So this is a much more current iteration of projects that I'm working on. Yeah.
Nice.
But
That's a good.
still with a very heavy emphasis on process.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things I really enjoyed about One Bite at a Time is being that I worked in graphic design, Don worked in graphic design, the process in which other creators go about things is always fascinating to see, and
Totally.
it's not something that a lot of creators are willing to share either. So that's something that's very different and of course, it's probably because of being a teacher, we tend to give more information out than maybe we should at times about how we do things.
Yeah, I definitely see this art book One Bite at a Time, but also the Annual Dispatch as like an extension of Ryan Claytor, the educator. I think you hit the nail on the head in that respect. I love not only sharing what I'm doing, I love seeing process work from not just other artists, but other people doing different things.
Yeah.
Like Mr. Rogers looms large in my personal world. I watched when I was a kid. I watched with my kid when he came around. I love those factory tours, making crayons, making cardboard, making chocolate, making all that stuff was endlessly fascinating to me and still is. So this is, a little bit of my attempt to like be a part of that world, helping share with people how projects are made. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. My next question, that's an excellent answer, by the way. But, and we're not grading you on this, so don't worry.
Well,
But
I mentioned I'm a teacher. Maybe there's a report card coming at the end of this. I don't know.
I guess this next question, I'm projecting myself onto you. When you're going to have a project like this, does this make you work harder to have stuff to put in there, or is this something that's already required being a teacher at a state university?
That's a good question. So, I'm going to answer that last part first. At a university, uh, if you are a tenured professor, you are expected to publish, you're expected to produce. And while I am a full-time professor, I am not a tenured professor. So that is not part of my contract. So I could just sit on my tuchus and not make any books, and I would still be able to keep teaching. That is the particular contract that I have. If I did that, I would feel like a fraud. And I know that because it's happened before. When I became a dad, there was about this 5 year period where I was trying to get my daddy legs underneath me and trying to figure out how to navigate the world as a husband and a father and an artist and a teacher and somebody who was trying to make a new program of study happen. And I was unable to do everything because I'm a human. And uh, I started feeling really bad about myself and feeling really sad. And I didn't know what was going on at the time. But in retrospect and in looking back, I figured out, oh, I haven't come out with a book in half a decade. Like that's a part of me. That's what I do. That's part of my identity. That's what I love to make happen. And so I kind of went through that period and then reshifted focus. And in more recent years, I've been coming out with books on a more frequent basis than I was between 2013 to 2019, which was that 5, 6 year drought of publication for me. Um, so now I'm feeling much better about myself being able to produce things. But in retrospect, I was being a dad. I was doing what I was supposed to do. I was also forming a program of study at Big Ten University, which is a huge undertaking in and of its own. I was making curricular changes. I was doing monthly podcasts. I was running annual events. I was doing everything I possibly could to make myself indispensable as a comics professor? Like you say that, and people are like, "You're a what now?"
Yeah.
So I was doing everything I could to make myself indispensable, and in doing that, something had to give, and that thing was my own work. Now that I've kind of got that up and running in a more stable way, now I can kind of reshift focus and work on my own projects and have very current information to share with my students too, which I think helps them as well.
Oh
So,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
good answer. One thing, this is a sidebar. This is no question. You shouldn't feel bad about yourself. Kids don't come with instructions. And I'm
Yeah,
not
wouldn't it be
kidding because
nice
we've
if they
all
did?
been through this. We could all say it. But I was, I mean, I wanted a kid, but it was a scary proposition. And at that point in my life, my job was sucking all the life out of me. And no, I liked the job, but it just required a lot. And all of a sudden, this is coming up. And then my wife was in 16 hours of labor, and next thing you know, that they handed me this little screaming pink thing, and I'm thinking, what do I do? And it
Yep.
requires, especially the first. I talked to a woman I worked with. She had 2 kids, a little older than my daughter, and it was requiring. I was working nights. I was taking care of the baby during the day. My wife took care of the baby at night, and I didn't have. I'm like a cartoon where you just have squiggles and check marks and everything in front of you. Lightning bolts. And I just asked her. I says, "Does it ever get any better?" And I said, "Any easier?" And I'll say this, I love being a dad. Having my daughter, when she was small, was the greatest time. But nevertheless, it took all your attention. Sometimes you just need some time to yourself. And she answered what I wanted to hear, but I could tell it really wasn't the correct answer. She goes, "Yeah." Well, that was it. Well, anyway, one time my job had to call me in for some big programs in another city. And I said, "I can't, I have a baby." And she said, "Well, I've already talked to management. I'll take care of you. Bring your daughter over." Holly was, I think, a year and a half. Her girls weren't a lot older than that. So I took her over. Anyway, the next day, or a couple of days later, we were talking, and she goes, "I need to tell you something you need to hear. It gets a lot better." It's just that I couldn't answer it at the time, but taking care of a 2-year-old and having a 3-year-old, it's a lot better. This is because you don't have to tell your 3-year-old, "Don't walk in front of the swings." Don't mess with electrical outlets. And I thought, okay, that's all you need to hear. But Ryan, I want to thank you for doing your job and raising a good citizen instead of some delinquent that their dad wasn't around because he was making comics during my formative years.
Right.
But good job. Planet Earth
Yeah.
thanks you.
You
Yeah.
you bring up so many good points about parenthood and the overwhelm that comes with that initial transition from being a single person in this world to being a person that somebody depends on for their life. Like
Yeah.
that's a big transition. And I remember, going through all the classes and the parental lessons, and I was going to this. I went to the hospital to learn how to insert the child seat in the proper way, make sure it's all safe for you when the baby comes, and they handed me this stuffed animal and had me start strapping it into the chair that I just put in my car. And that was the point that broke me. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a real human in weeks, and I'm going to be a dad in weeks. And I lost it. I couldn't handle it. And so I fully understand what you're talking about in terms of like that liminal space of, being a couple and then being a family. And that's such a, man, those liminal spaces in our lives are so fraught, like you're not sure what's happening. Something's going to, you try to prepare yourself as best you can, but ultimately you don't know what's going to happen until it's happening, and then you deal with it the best you can. But anyway, all that to say, I'm completely on board with your description of parenthood.
Oh, yeah. And that was well said, by the way. And anybody listening to the show, if you're expecting a child, don't let it scare you because it is a wonderful time. But it's
Yeah.
like everything you go through in life, there are instruction manuals, but a lot of us don't read the instructions and just go through, we wing it. Just listen to the people around you. There's always somebody to help you and show you what to do.
Yeah.
You'll do fine.
Here, here.
It's funny because I'm listening to you guys both talk about your kids, and I'm sitting here just shaking my head because yeah, went through it too. I mean, I spent years at the time my kid was born, or shortly after, actually. I started doing photography for bands, and at some point, it all just became too much, and the photography had to go. and I stopped doing art other than my job, which, if you're an artistic person, if you're a creator and you stop doing art other than what you have to do between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. for someone else who you don't even care about the aesthetic of the look of it, it's a miserable place to be.
Yeah.
It's really rough on your head. And, we talked about, the D&D writing. Honestly, that's what really pulled me out of a lot of it, was finally sitting down and opening up a D&D book and going, oh yeah, I remember I used to do this. Oh, I remember I used to do art too. Ooh, let me try that. It's a wonderful feeling when you get to that point and you're like, oh yeah, I can balance all this stuff. Well,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Yeah. And I think it's so true what you say about, leaving your artwork behind can be so personally detrimental. And I have had conversations about this with other teachers, other educators who I see really going hard on trying to help other people, which is admirable. Yes, do that. That's a wonderful thing that you're doing. But also don't forget to nurture what you want to do.
Yeah.
You need that as a person, as an artist. And I didn't understand how important that was until I went through that drought and uh, finally got through the other side and realized what was going on with me. And now I really do try to talk with other educators, especially about that, because I see that same thing that happened to me happening to others. And I'd rather they go through it in an easier way than I did, because it took me a lot of banging my head against the wall before I realized what was going on. So yeah, I
Excellent.
completely agree, Rook.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
Um, I know we're talking about your project here, but I do have one question while we're talking about these things. Your students, they have to produce projects when your classes, am I correct?
That's right.
Now, this is something I've never really quite asked you, but I've always wondered every conversation we ever had, how does that work? Because I imagine you're getting a wide array of projects from people. Could you kind of run us through like what you expect in a class?
Totally. So I teach an introductory or fundamentals of comic art and graphic novels, and I teach an advanced class. And whether it's the intro or the advanced, both of them, every student comes out with their own comic book. So in the fundamentals class, over the course of a semester, I assign several short story comics. So the first one's about a 2 to 3 page comic. It happens to be an artist statement comic talking about what it is that they like to do and why they do it. So it doesn't have to be comics. It could be painting or sculpture or English or music or volleyball or whatever it is that they're into, but a 2 to 3 page short comic artist statement. That's their first project. Then the next project expands a little bit, like a 5 to 7 pager. Then the last project expands a little more, 7 to 10 pager. And then by the end of the semester, we compile those short stories into their own books. And they produce multiples of that book, not just for funsies. We take them to a local shop where they will sign and sell what they made over the course of the semester, which I feel is incredibly important. I do
Yes.
not want my classes to be busy work or making projects for project's sake that are just going to end up in your parents' closet until who knows when. I want these students to understand that their art has value. And when we do that into the year or into the semester signing, that's shown to them in a very plain way. It's also shown to them that they have control over this, meaning, or they have some control over this, meaning if they show up and they didn't tell anybody, then nobody's going to show up and it's going to be a pretty lackluster experience. But if they tell a bunch of folks and every student in the class tells a bunch of folks, then everybody's family and friends and loved ones are going to come out. And then that's going to be an incredibly positive sometimes life-changing experience for these students. And I've had both ends of the spectrum. And I tell my students this throughout the semester too, as we're gearing up for this. I'm like, look, I can hand you an in-store signing on a silver platter, and I can say, come hither, make money. But if you don't tell anybody about it, nobody's going to know about it, and nobody's going to come support you.
Yep.
I've had that happen before where the students and I are literally sitting around and I'm like, hey, did you tell anybody about this? And like, no, I was so busy, man. Finals week. What about you? Did you tell anybody? No, I forgot. Okay, well, I guess we'll just hang out here and look at each other for a couple hours then. But I've also had in-store signings where students walk out with literal rolls of cash in their hand, and they've brought this up to me and they've said, look at this, look what just happened. And I'm like, that's right, you did that,
Yep.
you made this happen. And so that's a first semester's experience. The advanced class, we make another comic, but instead of several short story comics, we focus on one longer length comic between 18 to 24 pages or so. It's about the same amount of pages, but it's also surprising how the same number of pages that they did the semester before can be so much harder. Meaning, it's a larger project, and that takes a very different toll on you
Yeah.
than just 2 or 3 pages every once in a while, or 5 to 7 pages every once in a while. But working on the same project for literally months at a time, a lot of them have never done something like that before. And not a lot of them have never had a project of that scope before. So I talk a lot about large project productivity, what they can do to keep morale up in hopes of, boosting that throughout the semester. But essentially, the advanced class also ends in a comic book, which they also have a number of different things they can do. Sometimes we'll do an in-store signing like the fundamentals class did. Sometimes they've done in-store signing tours where they'll go to several stores across the state of Michigan. And I've also coached students through their own Kickstarter campaigns where students have garnered sometimes $1,200 up to $2,500 for a
Nice.
comic book that they made in college. Like, if you'd have told me I could make $2,500 on my first comic, I would have thought you were nuts.
Yeah.
That was not my experience growing up and making comics, but it has been my students' experiences who I've coach through some Kickstarter campaigns. So there's a few different routes that we can take at the end of the advanced course that can be similar or a little more ambitious, depending upon how the students are feeling in that particular semester.
I got you, but you already set up a groundwork for that first course to do it. I can't stress to people listening to this how important this is, because sometimes we've had new creators on the show that don't have experience to it, and that's fine. We're all the same way. But a lot of us that do this, it's an introverted type of thing. For most of us, there are some I've seen that they control time and space, and the whole world comes to them. But most of us, you're reading comics, you're a reader, you're drawing or you're writing, and they're solitary things. And sometimes it's hard to put yourself out. When I say sometimes, all the time, it's hard to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
When Dallas talked about starting a podcast, all I thought was, I'm not going to talk where everybody can hear me. Say things that. But if you got people out there, and even if they didn't tell anybody, nobody showed up, and you said you'll all look at it. One, you're pretty nice to look at, so that's not a bad thing. Two, it's still a learning experience, because they said, well, I should have put the word out. That is a learning thing. But if you can get people to do what they want to do and then present it out and put themselves out, that's more than gold. That's diamonds, man.
Yeah, I agree. It's pretty fulfilling when it all goes well, and I do everything in my power to make it go well every semester. So some are more successful than others, but yeah, it's pretty gratifying when it all works out.
Now, Oh, go ahead, Rook. Go ahead.
I'm just curious. How many students walk into your class expecting it's an easy A?
It's, on the first day of class, going around doing the syllabus, playing the name game, and I also have them tell me their name, their major, and why they came to the class. Some of them are telling me, I've read comics all my life. I've dreamt of doing a class like this. And great, you're in the right place. But I've also had students. Did I tell you about the volleyball player in my class? I
No,
can't.
no.
Okay.
No.
I I had this one student who was like, well, I've already taken volleyball too many times, and I don't know. I thought I saw this class, and it seemed easy, so I came in here. And I was like multiple things running through my
Oh,
head. First
bless
of
your
all, like
heart, child.
I'm so happy to know how unfiltered our relationship is going to be this semester. So fantastic. Thank you for telling me that. The other thing that was going through my head is that this student is not going to last in this class very long because comics are tough.
Yeah.
And so I had a very incorrect assumption because this student not only stuck around, but thrived. Like they brought skills with them that most students didn't have, meaning they used to do scrapbooking with their parents. And so at the end of the semester, they were proposing these wildly ambitious projects where you'd have like, hidden pockets inside the book that would pop open and you pull things out. And I said,
Wow.
I love this, but remember, you got to make multiples of this thing because you're going to be selling this at the end of the semester. And it's one thing to do it in your own singular scrapbook. It's an entirely different thing to essentially manufacture that and become your own assembly line. And she's like, no, I got it. I've been doing this forever. I'm like, okay, let's see it. Because I do not like telling students no. If they have ambition to do something, I want to turn them loose and do it. And she did it in spades. I could not believe the multiples of books, how complex each of them were. And so anyway, I mentioned that story to say that's a reminder to me that I never know what a student's going to bring. Even after teaching for decades at this point, I'm still surprised. I might think I have someone pegged. I'm like, nope, Ryan, you don't. Remember that volleyball player? You don't have anyone pegged.
Yep.
So let's, give everybody the benefit of the doubt, treat everyone the same, and see where all this goes.
Okay. From hearing that story, let's pause for a minute. Everybody listen and pause. Go hug somebody you love and then come back. All right. Thank you. Let's back.
It's so funny because I had a student like that. I had a guy from Saudi Arabia. He was like the third or fourth son. So we were sitting one time and we were talking, and he was having a lot of trouble in the class. And I was like, why did you choose to do graphic design courses? And he goes, well, my dad said it's easy to do. And I laughed and I went, you're finding out it's not. And he goes, no, it's really hard, man. And he goes,
Yeah.
I'm just not getting it. And I was like, well, I think your biggest problem is a language barrier. Why don't you have an interpreter? And he goes, well, nobody offered me one. I got the kid an interpreter. Next thing I know, this kid's pulling out design that I couldn't even think of.
Wow.
And he's doing it in all the text is being done in Arabic. I mean, I was looking at it and I was like, that's phenomenal. I was like, why are you doing it in Arabic? He goes, that way I can throw it in my dad's face. That was his whole purpose. Once he locked in, his whole purpose was, I want to show off to my dad that I can do this. Like, you know what? I don't care what your reason is. Go kill it.
Right. That's awesome.
Well,
That's
is
incredible.
Awesome. Okay, everybody,
Wow.
listen to the show. Stop for a minute. Go high five somebody, and then we're back. That's awesome.
Oh man.
I don't have any good stories. I want everybody to fail. So you're all on your own.
Oh man, Ryan, it is always so much fun talking to you. I mean, we could honestly go on forever. Before we end, of course, you know the question. where can everybody find Ryan Claytor and Annual Dispatch on the internet?
Well, I would love it if they would head over to annualdispatch.com. That'll take you straight to the Kickstarter page. Try to make it nice and easy for you. And I'm always at elephanteater.com, like a person who eats elephants. For first time Two Dimension Podcast Ryan Claytor episode listeners, that's a really weird name, but it's a saying that my dad used to tell me when I was a kid. He'd say, well, it's like eating an elephant. You just do it one bite at a time, and before you know it, you're done. So I always think about that when I have big tasks in front of me and kind of keep me grounded and pay tribute to my pops too. So annualdispatch.com for this current project that I'm kickstarting right now, and elephanteater.com for all time of what you want to find Ryan Claytor.
And those
And
will be
Matt-
on the blog as well. So
And may I also just say, on Ryan's website, elephanteater.com, there is a resources page. If anybody is listening who is curious about like how should they go about doing certain aspects of creating your own comic, there's an amazing resources page on his website that I recommend constantly to people, and I'm going to do it again right here. Ryan, you're a wellspring of knowledge on your website. I've read through every single one of those articles because, you know, I'm an idiot and I decided to try and write my own comic.
Well, that's awesome to hear. I'm glad that you're finding them helpful. That's really cool. I never know if anybody reads them at all, so that's nice to hear. Thank you. And also thank you for having me back on the show. Is this three-peat? Is this four-peat?
No, this is like 4.
you've been
Oh my
on
God.
4 times.
Oh my gosh, that's nuts. We'll have to make a pin or something. But anyway, I'm really happy to be back here. It's always such a pleasure to talk with both of you. And Dallas, I know you're editing right now. Thank you so much for doing what you do for the show. And yeah, I'm always so excited to come back. So thank you for having me back. Sincerely.
You're always welcome. And a pin would be cool, but just remember, Lori Calcaterra has you beat. Sounds down. You're going to have to do shows before you catch up, buddy.
I'm going to have to start working harder.
All right, everybody. Until next time,
read
more
comics.
You can hear our most recent 20 episodes on iTunes. If you would like to hear our older episodes, you can find them on our blog. Just go to bunchofdorks.com and click on the Cyclops.
Two Dimension can be found on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe, rate, leave a review, tell a friend, or like us on Facebook. Thanks for listening.
Do you want to be part of the show? Draw us a fake comic book cover and we'll use it to promote new episodes online.
If you'd like to promote your music, send us your MP3 and you can have a musical spotlight on our show. Plus, we'll add your link on our music page.
We have 3 t-shirt designs. Find them on the sidebar of the blog. Listen to the show. Wear the shirt.